It is 4:33 p.m. I am calling the February 17th meeting of the Public Safety and Human Services Committee of the Whole to order. In attendance are Council President Stewart, Council Vice President Nueva Camina, Council Member Parsi, Council Member Forsyth, Council Member Soni, Council Member Kritzer, and myself, Presiding Officer, Council Member Prakria. There are 3 action items on the agenda. The first action item is the body-worn camera redaction fees, with staff presenter Deputy Chief Brian Coates.
Hi, good afternoon, Council. Brian Coates, Deputy Police Chief. This is going to be a conversation around a resolution as it relates to collecting fees for body-worn camera redaction. I will turn this over to and introduce you to Mavic Hazan, our civilian commander, who will discuss this item. Also online for questions is Chief Lowe, who's joining us remotely. So with that, turn it over to Mavic.
Thank you. Most of the information we do have outlined in the agenda memo, but the basis of this is to actually recover the costs incurred of direct staff time that's allocated towards generating the release of records of body-worn camera footage, only for those parties that are qualified to receive them. And those would be people that are not directly related to a case that speaks to the case. Oh.
Are there any questions? I think I saw Councilmember Forsyth's hand up first, so I will go there.
I will kick us off. Thank you. Thank you for bringing forward the information. I was really glad to see that the people that are involved in an incident will not be charged this this fee. So that kind of went at one of my questions, which I believe also would relate to no fee for cases of allegations of misconduct. Would that be covered in that?
The exemption would apply to people who are directly involved with a case. Yes.
Okay. So if there's an allegation of misconduct, the person that would be the accused or accuser would not face this fee.
That's right.
Okay. And is there any cap on how much the fee could be?
It's a set per minute fee.
Right.
And there's no cap.
Have we explored looking at a cap?
We can.
Okay. Thank you.
Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Building off of the question that Councilmember Forsyth just asked, will requesters receive an estimate before work begins, since there is no cap? So
Yes.
This way there will be. Great, thank you.
Councilmember Parsi.
You mentioned that there is going to be there's increasing cost based on this fee that we currently provide for free. Do we have an idea of the current costs that have been incurred so far, and an estimate for the revenue to be generated from the program, and estimated cost for implementing this program?
I think it's important to note that we haven't really looked at the revenue piece of this. To put it in context, this comes from an ever-increasing demand for our body-worn camera footage for private uses, typically on YouTube. We can get anywhere from 10 to 14 requests per week for specific cases that have body-worn camera footage. These are people usually in the Midwest or the East Coast that are really utilizing a free service provided by the city of Redmond to give them content for their purposes. We don't know if the purposes are for profit or whatnot, but this is more of a way to deter some of those requests because of the amount of staff time that we incur.
Council President Stewart, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Deputy Chief and Commander Hizon. It's really great to meet you. As you said, the memo is really thorough, so thank you for that. We have, as a council, been interested and have, in the last budget cycle, had a package put together of some of the revenue generating new tools that we are interested in, as well as some of the cost recovery. So I didn't remember this specific topic being involved in that cost recovery research, but I'm happy to be, proven otherwise if we previously have discussed this one. Typically, we don't see something once and then go straight to consent with it, and that's why I'm asking that question. Like, it could be helpful if we have a reminder of when we might have seen this before or seen that this was coming. I also have a similar question regarding the volume of the current problem, and it's super helpful to hear that deterrence is part of the goal here. So I actually, earlier today, I sent a very similar question to the chief around, I understand the methodology that was explained really well about how we got to 88 cents per minute, because it's really a per minute of staff time calculation. But what we don't have a sense of is how big of the volume. If, for instance, this had been implemented in 2025, do we know what the recovery would have been?
Unfortunately, we have not yet started tracking down to the granular detail because it just depends case-to-case basis on what they're asking for, of what we would be charging accordingly. So, but just for context, for 2025, we received 2,128 requests, but not all of them would fall under this fee as a qualifier. Some of them are from the district attorney's office, for example, so it's not all just as an actual fee qualifying request. So 2024, we had 2,111. So definitely there's that uptick from 2,111 in 2024 to 2,128 requests in 2025. And back in 2023, we only had 1,900. So it's definitely seeing more traction in popularity for these kinds of requests.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Soni.
How do we ensure that this is not going to disproportionately limit access to people, those who are not in the capacity to pay? Will there be any waivers or any reductions, and how that will be decided?
So the option for not having to pay for this, if you do qualify as someone who would otherwise pay for it, is we have appointment times available 40 hours a week for someone who's interested to come in, and we set up a laptop with one of our staff, present, and provide that access to the requester in our lobby, in our police lobby. Mm-hmm.
I think.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's it.
I think for the sake of time, I'm probably going to limit questions unless anyone who has not asked a question. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Kritzer.
Yeah, I would just weigh in that it seems like we have a couple more questions on this before we might be ready for consent. I would be really interested if we could even have the kind of written description of what you shared in terms of the types of cases, because I think we see what are the cases that requesters are exempt from these charges on, which seem like the relevant people involved in the cases or involved in those different pieces with it. I think understanding what the problem we're trying to solve in writing would be very helpful, especially I can understand if we are getting people from outside of Redmond who are essentially using this for internet videos. And I think in terms of the discussion around the cap, I'd be interested in that discussion more, because I could see actually not having a cap being helpful if someone were to, say, make a giant request that would take up a huge amount of staff time, and it's not something that's actually relevant for those involved in the case or other things. So, but I think probably there's more discussion for us to have, so we could get that information and review this again. I would support that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's more discussion to be had, so we want to talk things over more before we move to consent for March 3rd. Any objections to that? Perfect. All right, we will be moving on to the next action item, which is the Washington Traffic Commission Agreement with Again, Staff Presenter Brian Coates with Chief Darrell Lowe on the line.
I will take this one. This is just a reoccurring interlocal agreement between the city and Washington Traffic Safety Commission, specific to how it relates to Target Zero initiatives. There is a federal grant, and then from the federal grant, a statewide grant that has a few $100,000 in it. From that, each participating city is allocated X amount of dollars for traffic safety initiatives, Target Zero related, seat belts, speeding, distracted driving, and the like. This year, the state representative, based on our numbers and our population and however they figure it out, has allocated us $9,500 that we use to reimburse for officer overtime and straight time as they do these targeted initiatives. And they are enforcement-based and they are education-based. This is a renewed contract. It started in October, goes till next September. We didn't submit for any reimbursement in 2025 based on staffing. We didn't do any initiatives, so we didn't reimburse for it, but we intend to in 2026. With that in consideration, we'd like to move this item to consent on March 3rd.
I see a question from Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. So we didn't have anything that qualified for 2025. So how does this grant change operations for 2026?
The only change is that now we will participate in the initiatives and the task force and then submit for reimbursement.
The response in the memo said there was nothing that qualified because of staffing issues.
In 2025.
In 2025, does this money now give you capacity to have overtime, to have more staffing? It's definitely going to be a shift, but I'm just trying to figure out how.
It has nothing to do with staffing. It's just for overtime. Usually it's our traffic officers and some patrol officers that work in overtime DUI emphasis, for example, in the middle of the night. So the bucket of money has carried over to 2026, so we have the entire $9,500 to get reimbursement for.
Okay, and it'll mostly be through overtime hours?
Mostly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Council President Stewart.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for bringing this forward. And the contract has the very specific mobilization dates for these campaigns. The contract also requires us to communicate with the public about the emphasis patrols that will be happening and all of that. I just wanted to acknowledge that this is absolutely something that the city should participate in, and it's in alignment with all of the other work that we have been doing to make our roadways more safe. I'm excited to see what the communications look like on this, and just acknowledge also that enforcement is not a solution in and of itself, right? It's one of the tools in our toolkit. We have our Safe Streets for All action plan, and it uses a systems approach to safety. And much of this is cultural too. We know that we should have the respect of our neighbors and their kiddos not to text and drive and not to drive inebriated or not sober. So I just see this as an additional tool for a few dates, with a few campaigns, and I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for those comments. It absolutely is not just enforcement. It's engineering, it's education, and it is enforcement, which is a component of that. And from a social media campaigning standpoint, we always advertise that this is going on. We don't want it to be a secret. We're not into the gotcha moment. This is to make people or encourage people to make better choices when they're behind the wheel.
Council Vice President Nueva Camino.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chief, for that, because when I was going through the memo and how clearly everything was laid out, and with the communications, I'm excited about that education piece. And then you teed it up perfectly, because I've got to ask, what are the guardrails that we're going to put in place to ensure that certain demographics aren't disproportionately impacted?
Well, it's the driving behavior is the driving behavior, and the demographic of who's driving, if it's a danger, is people should be held accountable the same.
Great.
And we don't know who's driving until we pull them over and make contact.
Thank you.
Any more questions on, Councilmember Soni?
Very simple and a short question. So the amount of $9,500 was because I couldn't find this in the other documents, is this something that amount has been finalized, or is there chances that we can even get beyond 9,500 if needed?
It was basically an email exchange between our staff and the Target Zero staff down in Kent that came up with this number. And it's, I think I spelled it out in the outcomes section, but it's a certain amount based on this specific campaign. In other words, like $4,000 for speeding, $5,000 for distracted driving. So they break it down that way, and I don't honestly know how they come to that conclusion, but we will take whatever money the state will give us for this. I would think so.
Awesome. Looks like there are no more questions. Are there any objections to moving this forward to consent on the March 3rd business meeting? Wonderful. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I have been asked to swap the order of the first informational topic with the last action item topic so that our new emergency preparedness coordinator can get a chance to introduce himself. Are there any objections to that? Awesome. Well, then we will be moving forward with the OEM quarterly update and 2026 preparedness outlook from Deputy Chief Farrell and Emergency Preparedness Coordinator Nathan Hupp. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I am Deputy Chief Farrell with the Redmond Fire Department. Just real brief contextual background before I turn it over to the OEM team over here. For the new council members, you haven't seen that we've undergone some changes with our Office of Emergency Management in the last year, but we've decided to make some really strategic and thoughtful revamping in the Office of Emergency Management over the course of the last year. One of the things that we really wanted to address was Redmond, as you all know, has been a very growing and dynamic community for quite some time. And with that, the role of the emergency management has to evolve with it. And one of the things is that it's more complex than just looking outward to see what the community actually needs from emergency management. You also have to marry that up with what does the city and the government and what does our processes have to do to be able to go with it. So last year, we had a vacancy in our Office of Emergency Management manager, and we actually did a nationwide search looking specifically for somebody who could come in and understood what it meant to actually run a program at the city level. We also added a new colleague who's also sitting up here at the table with me, an emergency readiness coordinator, somebody whose role is really to be specifically focused on what does the community need and what does the city need in order to be prepared to be able to handle the rigors of the job. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Nathan Hupp, our new emergency preparedness manager.
Yeah, thank you, and great to meet you all. So like Ami said, I'm Nathan Hupp, the new emergency manager. I began with the city in early November, and I'm coming from a similar municipality of size in Maryland, kind of same exact position, so that's really contributed to my transition with the city of Redmond. So I'd like to begin kind of with an overview of the Office of Emergency Management, really because we have new council members as well, so I thought that would be a good place to start. So the mission of the Office of Emergency Management is to protect the lives, property, and the environment by managing the city's emergency preparedness and disaster response efforts. The department works to ensure the readiness of all city departments, employees, residents, and businesses for all hazards. And a little bit of the background, so obviously emergency management is housed within the fire department. It's its own designated division. And then my position leads kind of the day-to-day functions of the department and then reports directly to the Deputy Chief of Administration and Support Services. So kind of focusing on the end of 2025 quarter 4 activities. So we updated the hazard mitigation plan, and that's actually another item on the agenda, so we won't spend too much time on that one on this. And then before my arrival, staff opted to do a SWOT analysis of our emergency support functions. So these emergency support functions are part of our comprehensive emergency management plan, and there's 15 of them. And so what we'll do with that is we will incorporate them into minor updates before FIFA. And then they will also, that feedback will go into our larger comprehensive emergency management plan update that we're mandated to do from the state. And then kind of coming into this program, I thought it was important to do an initial review. So I've completed several analyses, and will be making recommendations to city leadership on kind of how to move forward with this office. And it's mostly centered on our Emergency Operations Center, as well as kind of our major planning initiatives for the next kind of year or two. At the end of November, in preparation for Redmond Lights, OEM hosted and conducted a tabletop exercise. This was really to strengthen kind of city's leadership and departmental collaboration, and then to test our event action plan that we created. Another effort that was kind of done or initiated before my arrival was updating our continuity of operations plans. So we are in the process of updating those. The goal was to have them updated before FIFA. And then emergency management is leading that effort to ensure we kind of have consistency in approach, as well as the content within them. And then we also, OEM participated or hosted 12 outreach events, so that kind of ranges from community meetings, individual meetings with community leaders, and then just like personal preparedness presentations. The beginning of this year, in Q1, so we're in the process of implementing a new emergency notification system, and that's powered through Everbridge. So the target launch would be in the first week of April, and then this would really increase the city's capability to send out emergency communications to residents, businesses, and visitors. So we're really excited about this, and so we'll definitely have a lot more information to come, and then how you all can be proponents and kind of market our new system as well. And then we updated Redmond's emergency radio station, AM 1650. Make sure to program it on your cars. So this upgrade also provides the ability to stream via the internet, so we're improving accessibility in that way as well. World Cup planning is also a major initiative right now to ensure departments prepare in kind of a coordinated effort, and ensuring that we can provide essential services, as well as respond and recover to any kind of FIFA-related incidents that may occur. And then we also hosted and participated in 3 additional public outreach events. So now looking at kind of the rest of 2026. So again, our major focus will be on the marketing of Everbridge, kind of leading up to and then after the launch, trying to kind of increase the level of opt-ins we get, and then what kind of emergency communications people can expect. And then we'll be conducting a FIFA-related tabletop exercise in April. We'll seek to conduct more training and exercise opportunities for city staff, especially with kind of our updated plans as well. They need to learn their role. And then this also includes a training course being offered to the City Council in March. And then during World Cup, we'll certainly have kind of ongoing daily operations and coordination that will be occurring. And then for the comprehensive emergency management plan formal update I mentioned, so per the state code, we're required to update it by the end of 2027. So after FIFA, beginning in August, we'll start that planning process. It'll take about a full year, but that'll put us in a good position to submit it to the state, receive their recommendations for any changes, make those changes, and then submit it before that deadline. And then we'll always be seeking to identify public outreach opportunities. We also want to take a more proactive approach, kind of making sure they align with our new established key performance indicators as it relates to resilience and preparedness. And so that's all I've prepared today for kind of my intro, and then, yeah, sorry, I'll let Kyle introduce himself as well.
Well, good afternoon. Is that on? Good afternoon. I didn't want to mess with your flow. You're in a zone. Well, good afternoon, Council. My name is Kyle Nelson. I am the Emergency Readiness Coordinator. I come just right from next door, City of Bellevue, where I was an Assistant Fire Marshal for about 6 years. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Deputy Chief Farrell. Nathan, great to have you on board. And thank you, Kyle, as well. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you so much, and welcome to Redmond. Excited to have you both. And thank you for the presentation and the work already. Excited for the next item as well, for us to be able to discuss that. And the work ahead on updating our CEMP. I think that's been a topic of ongoing conversation as we've had good use of it over the time that I've been on council. And I just wanted to make sure that it's captured. I think I've talked with existing staff about this, and I think several of us have expressed that I think having really kind of clear roles and responsibilities in emergencies for council is a real interest. So just since we have new folks on, I just wanted to highlight that as an area that has been an area of interest for the council, and I think getting that detailed also in the CEMP even more clearly. We learned a lot during pandemic times, during heat domes, during a variety of different events. So during bomb cyclone. So being able to recognize kind of what the council's role in those things is really important. And then one quick question I had was, is the Everbridge platform, or is that going to be able to leverage the emergency alerts within people's phones, or is that an opt-in sign up?
So that would be separate. So I think what you're referring to is wireless emergency alerts.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
So that is, we are not an authorized iPause alert originator. So the King County is, as well as the state. So they would be authorized to push those wireless emergency alerts. So that's, people don't opt in for those. Essentially, those are kind of forced, pushed to your phone for imminent threats to life. So this would be, what we're launching is a opt-in system that we would try to boost. We also have the ability to it's kind of formally reverse 911, where we have data from people who have opted in kind of from a third party. Like that could be like business landlines, where kind of we're getting into that gray area where is it an imminent threat to life, and we could send to those who may have not opted in directly to Everbridge, but have opted in somewhere else, that we have access to that information.
You mind if I add just a little bit to it? I know, so there's a staff report coming up tonight where there'll be an update on OEM on FIFA, because there's some ways that we actually selected Everbridge to be able to leverage communications during the FIFA event that Nathan will be able to get into a little bit more tonight. But to what Nathan was saying was, when we went through the vendor selection process, this particular vendor had like a bank of about 88,000 numbers already in the system through their resources. So that allowed us to kind of marry a hybrid of, some people will opt in, and that's what we want. So there'll be a huge communications run to be able to go get as many people as we can and identify them so that they do have the ability to receive these messages. But we also start with about 88,000 numbers from the community that are already planted in there. We don't know how great that will be, and we're not relying on it, but it'll be a blend of the two so that we can maximize what we can do. But I know he'll talk more about tonight about the keywords, which is really the powerful part for FIFA, where people can opt in with a very easy keyword.
Councilmember Parsi.
I'm sorry if this was covered already, but do we have an anticipated number of visitors to Redmond for FIFA period?
No, I don't think we have a total anticipated number. I think to the region, it's estimated 750,000.
Council Vice President Nueva Camino.
Thank you. Deputy Chief, thank you for bringing this forward and the work that you did on this before we got our team. And to the team, Nathan, it's wonderful to see you again. Kyle, welcome to Redmond. Looking forward to it. The only comment that I have besides the welcome is, it's been said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I'm really excited that we're building out this office and moving us forward. So thank you both for being here.
Awesome. Well, I think we will just hop back then into the third action item, which is the adoption of the Hazard Mitigation Plan and Redmond Annex.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'll be kind of lead presenter on this one. So this is the 2025 Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan update. And then just a little background. So hazard mitigation plans, or jurisdictional hazard mitigation plans, are updated every 5 years. And that's a federal requirement. And then the last version of our plan was adopted by the Redmond City Council in 2020. And then the King County Council adopted this current version of the plan, the 2025 version, earlier in January. And so I also wanted to add that we do have a King County Emergency Management representative available if there's any kind of questions that may relate more to the county as well. So I'll start with the goal of the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, and it's actually the same goal as our City of Redmond Annex, as we thought it would be good to ensure that those are consistent. So the goal is to create a framework that reduces the impact and susceptibility of the identified hazards on people, property, and the environment, prioritizing historically underserved communities. And so what were kind of the major changes from the 2020 version? So it was rewritten and kind of reformatted to comply with FEMA's 2022 updated local mitigation planning requirements. So this includes the incorporation of new subsections addressing climate change considerations, and then ensuring the plan accounts for evolving impacts of climate change on hazards and vulnerability. And then there were certainly improvements in newly available data, as well as better tools to provide better insight into our hazard exposure and vulnerabilities. This 2025 plan places a stronger emphasis on equity and social justice and integrates them into how we understand the risk and vulnerability. And then last, there was an addition of a community profile, and that was to understand the demographics and the vulnerable populations within the county. Moving on to kind of adoption. So the adoption of this updated Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, as well as the Redmond Annex, it's an enabling tool to access competitive federal and state grant funds for community or infrastructure projects, such as the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program or the BRIC grant, which is the Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities. And so once FEMA receives the city's adoption letter, FEMA would then issue an approval letter for Redmond, and that would be kind of the end of the process. And then the other thing to note is that the state and FEMA have reviewed and approved the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, as well as the annexes. So really, it's just submitting our letter and then receiving that official adoption or approval letter for Redmond. Questions?
See a question from Council President Stewart.
Well, thank you so much. Really excited to have this back and be able to take a look. A lot of great work going on here and coordination. I wanted to also give a shout out for the resilience hubs and really look forward to seeing and accepting budget offers that help implement those in the next biennium. My question is on page 31 regarding the mitigation strategies. So you have some conversation about the upgrades to the AM radio. That's super important. I heard during the bomb cyclone that folks did lean on AM radio to get information and that kind of thing. More talk of the third-party communications platform and all of that. I actually just thought what was missing actually was our foundation. And this has been a tool that has been so useful in those it's hard to grade emergencies, but the bomb cyclone was a good example where actually the best communication coming from the city was coming from our email listserv. And I have never gotten more calls as a council member than I did during that period of time over those few days. Folks really feeling like they're in the dark, and it turned out, oh, they weren't subscribed to our emails. So I see here you've got objectives over a number of years about increasing these other services. I just always think we can always do more as a city to make sure we're getting folks subscribed. I know when we were at the Derby Days booth, we talked to people a lot about this. Are you getting our emails? Are you subscribed? Do we help people do it? But worth mentioning in case you'd like to integrate that here, or if you feel like that's being captured somewhere else in the overall strategy, that would make sense too. But it really just feels like the foundation of what we're starting with. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think it's also good to note that we can always update this plan. We'll take a look at it annually, but we can always add certain components to the plan, adjust mitigation strategies. And then the other thing is that, so we are, as part of the Everbridge launch, also developing standard operating procedures on how the city does alert and warning collectively, kind of the whole architecture of it. So that would be factored in, kind of what tools do we use for what types of incidents, and then what are the considerations, and then how do we go to, like the other former question, what rises to the level of a wireless emergency alert? Because it's all integrated together. And then doing that in an inclusive way with kind of the language or limited English proficiency as well. Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Parsi.
I would love to see I would love to know if we have also taken into consideration other hazards that can impact life or a property beyond what is listed here and required by King County. And I'm sure that you have more documents where you're tracking things, but just wanted to make sure that road safety and infrastructure for driving for people getting into fatal accidents potentially, that would be covered. But I'm sure if it's not covered here, that's fine with me, but I just wanted to hope that it's covered somewhere.
Yeah, thank you. So part of my recommendations is leading an effort called Threat and Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment, a THIRA. So that would be my hope, is that the city would complete its own kind of risk assessment process in 2027. Really, that expands what threats and hazards you do consider and score. It can also break out, like in the plan under severe weather, it kind of incorporates extreme heat, cold, tornadoes. This actually breaks it out and then individually scores them as well. So that's a great kind of tool to actually understand the risk associated kind of in those subcategories as well. So yeah, certainly that's kind of a process. I would agree with you on expanding that consideration.
Wonderful. Well, I see no more questions. Are there any objections to moving this to consent on the March 3rd business meeting? Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Welcome again to Redmond, Nathan and Kyle. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
The next item on the agenda is an informational informational session on prevention for Q3 and Q4. The Q3 and Q4 2025 report, prevention report from Rich Gisecki of the Fire Department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. Rich Gisecki, Fire Marshal, Redmond Fire. This is kind of our turning into a biannual report out on Redmond Fire Prevention's performance metrics as they relate to the budget, as well as our what used to be a quarterly fire save loss report, kind of just reporting on the fire incidents within the city of Redmond. Good news is that bottom of the line, we're doing well with our budget performance measurements, both in the development review side of the house, as well as the annual inspection side of the house. We're also having very good success in what we are calling our system reliability program, which is kind of the ongoing inspection, testing, and maintenance of fire life safety systems that are required by code to be installed in buildings. And that is having a direct impact on the decrease in magnitude of fires that we're seeing within the city. So that's kind of the fourth piece of this. No fatalities, no injuries, and even though we've had a large number of fire incidents, very few of those became significant fires that required a fire investigator. And of those, the property value loss was quite low. So we're doing very well on those budget performance measurements as well. So if you have any questions about the report, I'd be glad to answer them tonight.
Council President Stewart.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate the look and having the inspections incorporated. I think that might be new or something not as prominent as prior reports. So I do appreciate that. My question is around potentially another factor that we've not previously had in these quarterly or biennial reports, but it is a unit of measure that helps inform budget decisions and capital planning decisions and the like, and that is the standard of cover and the response time. Have we incorporated that in these quarterly reports before, or would you perceive that to be something appropriate for this level of reporting in the future?
So, great question. A number of the things that we do within fire prevention do have a direct impact on the department standard of cover and the metrics that we're measuring in there. Percent of systems being maintained, number of locations being inspected, and that. But as far as like an overall department standards covered, this is just a small subset of those.
I understand.
But I can add into that. Part of what we wanted to be able to do was to be able to provide a more comprehensive reporting on fire. So what you're drawing in is from our operations side. And I think that being able to kind of blend what do we do from the prevention side, and then when a call comes in, how are we responding on the operational side is totally doable for us. We are actually getting those numbers and checking in them on a pretty regular basis. So it wouldn't be difficult to be able to take those performance measures and then turn them into a part of this report.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your consideration. I'd be happy to take that conversation offline and make sure we're bringing the right level of detail to the right place. But again, that standard of cover being a often, oh, we're getting off here, so therefore, here's a budget request, right? So being able to be more familiar with all of that. Thank you so much for this look today.
Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. And I would agree with that metric, I think, in terms of where the public measures the most is how quick those response times are and what the coverage is. So appreciate Council President Stewart bringing that up. I just was curious about the multifamily residential building fire life safety inspections, which appears to have 0 versus 877. Can you explain that stat to us?
I can. So in the city, obviously, we have commercial and mixed-use buildings that we see downtown that contain businesses or apartment buildings, and those buildings are inspected by fire prevention staff, deputy fire marshals in the fire marshal's office. The straight multifamily buildings, the 8-plexes, 12-plexes, 4-plexes, the traditional apartment buildings, those are assigned to the fire operations crews to inspect those buildings within their first due response areas. And that has been an area that we've been struggling over the last several years to get those inspected with duty staff, just due to the amount of turnover, promotions, probationary firefighters, workload, training loads, all that kind of stuff. But we are revamping that program on the operations side. We track it because it is a building inspection issue for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I do appreciate the transparency on it, and hopefully we'll see an upward trend as we staff up more into the budget conversation. If there's budgeting we need to do to be able to meet those needs, helpful to know.
Yeah, as you guys noticed from the conversation we had at the staff report or the study session the other night, the new metrics that we're proposing for measuring performance is to encapsulate so that we can actually get into some of that detail on a multifamily. How many of them are there in the community? How often are we successfully getting out there to inspect them, and how do they relate with everything else? And so that's part of that evolution, because that visibility is important.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. Just looking at some of the highlighted investigations, I noticed there were a couple of dumpster fires, and years back we had a couple of porta potty fires, and we were concerned there might have been a trend happening. Are we concerned at all about that with these dumpster fires, or these kind of rags and?
The short answer is no, we're not worried about it. They kind of ebb and flow over time, and determining the cause of a fire in a dumpster is a really tough thing because it's all garbage.
Yeah.
So is it batteries? Is it, who knows? But we're not seeing that that's an incendiary set fire, so we're not seeing an issue with that.
Great. And then real quick follow-up, on the same topic, we saw more firework incidents this past year than we'd seen before. What sort of education fines, conversations are happening when those occur?
There's definitely a conversation about enforcement with police, and we're still trying to figure out how best to do that. It's a very transitory thing. You don't know that people are lighting off fireworks till after they've lit them off, and so trying to find out who's doing that to do enforcement has been very difficult. But
Are the folks that caused these 2 fires getting those fines?
that I do not know. That becomes a criminal thing.
All right, thank you.
Council Vice President Nueva Camino.
Thank you. Fire Marshal Kiske, great to see you. What trends stood out from 2024, since we're taking a look back at 2025? What trends stood out from 2024? And what are we kind of expecting, though we don't have a crystal ball, but kind of what trends are we expecting for 2026?
I think the biggest thing we saw, and we saw it both in 2024 and 2025, was a substantial increase in the number of cooking fires, which is attributable to a number of things probably. So in 2024 and in 2025 during Fire Prevention Week, we did quite a bit of public outreach on just, attentive cooking and, put your phone down while you're cooking, all that kind of stuff. Luckily, most of those kitchen fires that we're seeing are in fire-protected buildings. They have fire sprinklers and fire alarms, and so we're seeing small-scale fires limited to just the stovetop or the cabinets directly adjacent to it. But still, that's still property loss when you have fire sprinkler water saturating apartment units. That's still a big deal for those building owners and for those occupants. So we're looking to try and reduce that through some increased education with our operations crews on how more quickly to control fire sprinkler water flow situations to help limit that damage, but also to educate the people who are doing the cooking and creating the fires in the first place. So we're still looking at more public outreach and how we can kind of engage with those communities. The other big area that we're seeing in fires is brush fires and exterior fires. So climate change, dry weather, discarded smoking materials, all that sort of stuff. We're starting to see more and more fires in that. And so, again, education, education, education.
Yeah, and I would imagine that that would need to be even emphasized even more for 2026 with our very, very severely low snowpack that we have right now.
Yes.
And thinking ahead for brush fires and the like come August.
Exactly.
I would add to that, as we enter into the next budget planning process, one of the things that we've been discussing this quite a bit, is the evolution of the prevention department and gathering in community risk reduction, which again was something that we talked about during the staff report a little bit on. Some of our performance measures are designed for this, where you can actually be far more tactical and data-driven. If we know kitchen fires are happening, we can actually, instead of just having it be, every once in a while educating the homeowner, actually being able to go out, come up with educational plans and see if we can actually start to reduce some of that, but also have a data-driven approach to public education. That's something that we've talked about a bit. I've been in several meetings with you all talking about public education, and we've kind of ebbed and flowed. We really want to firm that up, because that actually can be a huge impact on driving down some of these numbers and keeping us away from the cliff of something getting a little bit more serious, because we aren't being as proactive as we can.
So, Councilmember Soni, do you have a question?
Actually, you partially did answered my question, which was about, what are the risks that we are dealing, because I can definitely see like a prevention measures were low, but you definitely answered a couple of those. For the system's reliability, I see it is like past due by 12%. So what is the risk profile, and it's how we can go towards that 100% goal? Is there any specific plan, or it would be just part of that?
Yeah, so the goal right now for 100% is we have dedicated staff working on these systems now, which is awesome. So we have an admin staff member as well as an assistant fire marshal who are working on the code enforcement. So a lot of the 12% represents not only an increase in just total number of systems being tracked. When we go back to 2021, we were about 3,000 systems. We've added about 400 systems to that total, but yet the percent of systems that aren't being maintained is being reduced. But a lot of times, the systems that we're having issues with are either on corporate campuses where they've got very complex systems and they have a lot of them, so there's a lot of maintenance and deferred maintenance that we're trying to catch up with, or it's with like HOAs and homeowners associations where tracking down the right people to get their systems tested has been a big challenge of who's responsible, who's that responsible party, and often that can cover multiple buildings within a complex, say. So we're doing a lot more specific outreach to those individual locations to find the responsible parties, do a lot of education about the what and why it's important, and then getting them into compliance.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Farrell and Fire Marshal Gasecki. My question was about the slide entitled Redmond Fire Department Investigator Assistance in Neighboring Jurisdictions. And I see two examples of investigations in Kirkland, one in Bellevue. I was wondering if you could give more of an overview of the regional partnership that goes on between our fire department and other fire departments in terms of helping each other with investigations, and whether there are any other departments helping us investigate some of our fires we have here in the city of Redmond.
That's a great question. So we've had a long-standing mutual aid and automatic aid agreement with all of our surrounding jurisdictions when it comes to operations. If there's a fire on the border between Bellevue and Redmond, obviously closest units go and we deal with the situation at hand. That's fairly reciprocal. The chief's been tracking that and I think reporting those numbers out to you. One of the lesser numbers is the fire investigations. So most departments have an internal fire investigation unit. They're all staffed a little bit differently, but we've always been very cooperative across the county, across the jurisdictional lines under our mutual aid agreements. And this is 3 instances where they had fires in their jurisdictions and they didn't have any fire investigators available, so they called us for assistance. Doesn't happen very often, but it does add to our investigation load, and it does obviously add to our workload as well. We don't typically have investigators come into the city of Redmond for our investigations because we have a very robust fire investigation unit and it's staffed in a very economical way. So we're able to robustly staff that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so we have a lot of internal backups for our investigation team when they're off duty. So
I see. Thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Wonderful. Well, thank you for the presentation. The next item on the agenda is a read-only item, the 2025 Police Activity Report. I do see Chief Lowe and Deputy Chief Coates in the audience in case my colleagues have any questions. Council President Stewart.
Sure, I'll go ahead and kick us off. Since we do have a few minutes, thank you to the chair and the chief for making the time. One of my suggestions was going to be actually that maybe next quarter, this could be scheduled as an item for a bit more deliberation, because we have had this as read-only for a little while, but it would be good, especially as a new team, to be able to walk through it. I'm seeing head nods around the table, so it looks like we're all on the same page. Would love to have next quarter back. I do know that we have a few folks in the audience today who came because there is some material about the automatic license plate reader embedded in the online presentation that's available here today. So I just wanted to confirm, and I'm happy to have the chief reiterate, but I just wanted to confirm for the listening audience that the camera program is currently suspended, and prior to this suspension, no data from the city of Redmond was compromised by some of the other concerns that happened in other cities, and the program continues to be under review. So if the chief has more to say on that, would be helpful, but that is one of the items I just know that we have questions in the audience and wanted to be able to address. Thank you.
That is correct. None of the Redmond data was compromised or used outside of the system, and the program is still currently paused.
Councilmember Kritzer.
And just for further clarification, the two slides about flock successes, so these are examples from before the program was paused from 2025?
Correct. The success stories were for the 4.5 months that the cameras were activated.
And I guess I would just ask, since this is actually a new set of slides that we've seen from this report, if you want to share any context around it, since it seemed like it was included to be able to share some information.
I'm happy to read those success stories.
You don't need to read them, just
okay.
Curious if you wanted to share any additional context.
The context is the cameras performed as intended. They are an asset to public safety. They are an asset to keeping the community safe.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. No surprise, also on the flock cameras. I see there are 6 examples here of successes, but it wasn't completely clear to me if they all originated in Redmond or if there was one that triggered my thought process that maybe it was originated in a neighboring city and yet they were caught here. So if we have any statistics or data around hits that occurred in Redmond while the program was active, or interjurisdictional moments where we were able to get information from another neighboring jurisdiction. When you come back, maybe next month, if we're doing this, then maybe we can have a little bit more data around how many of these instances occurred in Redmond, how many occurred with neighboring jurisdictions, and I'm guessing there are more than 6 instances. So if you have more data on that as well, that would be helpful.
Okay. So the information that we provided are the actual cases that we can directly correlate to the flock cameras when they were activated. I can go back and see the one that you mentioned. Yes, there was a case that originated in Kirkland. Because of that information, when that vehicle came here to Redmond, we were able to apprehend that person based on that bulletin from Kirkland.
Councilmember Soni.
So I have a question on this. Right now, for all these success stories, we are giving a huge benefit for the flock cameras. What could be the other attributes or other factors that contributed to this success? And if we have to put this in a percentage-wise, what percentage of the was like towards flock camera that made it really successful, so that we can see it together?
So essentially what happens is if a vehicle associated with a ongoing case or criminal activity passes one of the cameras, automatic license plate reader, I'll say, this is company specific, but there are other, automatic license plate readers. So if that vehicle passes by one, then that will alert the officers that that vehicle associated with a crime is in a specific area. That then allows us to respond to that area to attempt to apprehend that vehicle, that person, et cetera. One of the success stories here was there was a stolen vehicle that came into town, went into a light industrial area. Officers responded to the area. Within a couple minutes, we got a alarm activation. So now officers know and responded to that particular location. That ultimately resulted in a very short police pursuit of that particular vehicle. Had we not known that stolen car was in that area, we would not have been able to get there as quickly as we did to prevent that commercial burglary. So it's that type of success, if you will, that automatic license plate readers provide for our officers. Because obviously we can't be everywhere, but if we know a vehicle associated with criminal activity is in a certain location, then officers can go there, I'll say either preemptively or be there in a much more timely manner than waiting for an alarm company to call our dispatch center to put the call in and then officers to respond.
Council President Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, since we have just short time, I just wanted to reiterate for the listening public, we didn't have a full presentation on this tonight. Does sound like there's interest in the future. But we continue to have great news. So thank you, Chief, for this awesome report. Auto thefts continue to be down. Property crime continues to be down. Violent crime continues to be down. And most of the violent crime that we do have in Redmond happens within our own homes because domestic violence continues to pop on this report. And we know from our lived experience and community that that is a cultural issue for us to continue to tackle. But overall, just a really fantastic year-end report in terms of performance. And I look forward to the future conversation on the drone pilot program too, because this has been up and running for a bit now, and we're seeing worthy results here that I really look forward to the next conversation on that. So thank you so much.
Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Council President shared a lot of the topics that I was going to bring up, Chief, because I think that it definitely, to have this in a read only, and I love putting numbers rather than just saying, oh, this is down and that's down. Looking at those real numbers, when President Stewart mentioned that a lot of the violent crimes are happening within our own homes, just so that it's on the record, that 50% of assaults are happening in our homes. But the car thefts was significant drop, Chief. It's dropped 60%. And 60% when we're dealing with kind of relatively lower crime numbers, we've talked about this before, when we're talking about relatively low, it doesn't take a whole lot to move it, but 60% is pretty incredible. That's going from 312 stolen vehicles the year before down to 123. So when we do see successes on these particular ALPR readers, and we see there was one within the 6, there was one stolen vehicle that was associated and remedied with that. But we're talking about a drop from overall in the city from 312 down to 123. So kudos to you and your team for that. And residential burglary down 50%, and that's after 35% the year before. So great job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Soni.
Definitely, I'm so impressed with the numbers that has gone down. However, and this is something that just makes me feel a little frustrated in general, it's like about the domestic violence. Like the domestic violence assaults are now exceeded 50% of the total assaults. So are there any preventions or any partnerships or any plans that we can put it for an enforcement and help these numbers also to go down somehow?
So currently, the city has a domestic violence advocate that operates out of the prosecutor's office. I'm looking at other programs from some other surrounding cities to see if there is potentially some type of mitigation or some type of other partnership, much like when we end up with Child Protective Services type cases, to look for some type of wraparound type of care or service for that. I believe in Lakewood, they have a program. I have a meeting set up with that chief to talk about some of the things that they're doing, because they're doing something a little bit different so that it's not just a call response and in a prosecution piece, but that there is some type of aftercare or follow-up in the interim. So to try and find out, more details about that to see if it's applicable here or if there is potentially some other type of response or service that we can create.
Thank you, and thank you for your work and your team's hard work. I will also note that, for the record, we did not have a murder in Redmond in 2024 or 2025. And we just saw from the fire department's presentation that we have not had a fire death, I believe, in the city since 2011. So we have excellent public safety teams here in the city of Redmond. We have now reached the end of the agenda. Actually, one thing I wanted to add before that is I saw general consent that the next time we have a police activity report, we would want that not to be a read-only section, so I will make sure to do that. We've reached the end of the agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Perfect. Well, then I will call this meeting adjourned.